Welcome to this episode of Each One Teach One. I am Ify Kingsley. I am the CEO and the founder of Springboard, the African Nordic business platform. So we run B2B events where we help Finnish Nordic companies get into the emerging markets in Africa. So today I have with me an interesting guest, Denise Wall, joining me today to obviously give us a little bit of her perspective and experiences living here in Finland. And I'm really excited to welcome you, Denise.
Thank you, Kingsley.
It's really a pleasure. So just to kick us off, if you can just give us a little bit of intro about yourself.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly, I'd be happy to. So I'm Denise Wall, as Kingsley said. At the moment, I head up a small content marketing agency based in Helsinki that's called Spoon Finland actually. We are a subsidiary of a marketing firm that's based in Sweden and actually part of a much larger pan-Nordic network of agencies, but I'll just keep that bit of the story short. I'm probably better known for having spent many years at Yle, the Finnish national broadcaster, as part of the News in English team, where of course we were involved in many different kinds of news-related projects, day-to-day news reporting, podcasting, hosting election debates, and of course generally contributing to informing people who are not familiar with Finnish or English about what's happening in the news here in Finland.
Excellent. Of course, it's no brainer to get you to talk to our people, because I think that there's a lot going on, and our people also deserve to they deserve access to information, and there could not be better person to actually help to unfold this information, or to give this better information to people than yourself, with all your experiences and the things that you've got to live through in Finland. So if you don't mind, what are the things that helped you to get into the Finnish professional life? Because I thought it's really not something that is that easy. As a person of color coming from abroad, basically.
Yes. Well, I'm originally from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, and I came to Finland nearly 20 years ago to join my family here in Finland, my Finnish partner at the time. And well, as you've hinted, it's not an easy thing to break into professional life, into the job market here in Finland, as any migrant, person of color or otherwise, mainly because of the Finnish language barrier. But in terms of my own story, when I first came, I had been a journalist in my home country, also at the national broadcaster there. And so I had a clear idea of the skill set that I had, and I was looking to break into the market by looking at what was present in the market and where I could find a match between the skills that I had and where there was a need in the market. And so I thought that, okay, there are international companies operating in Finland, and it seemed that they were operating with English as their official language, and I was a writer. So I thought that's a clear area where I can add value, and that's where I sort of targeted my job search. But it was tough going, and I think underestimating the size of the obstacle, I felt that I could accelerate the process in some way. And so what I did was I started prospecting for internationally facing companies in the town that I lived in at the time. And I found one company that fit the profile where I thought I could add value. And I asked within my network, which was then the network of my Finnish family, for help getting some FaceTime with the CEO of that company. And I managed to arrange a meeting. So I did get a meeting time. And in that meeting, first of all, my preparation for the meeting was I tried to get to know as much as I could about the company and its business and where I could add value, as I said. And during that meeting, I pitched to the CEO what I called a collaboration proposal. I did not go asking for a job.
Yeah.
I said, this is what I perceive to be some areas where you could do with some help, and these are the skills that I can bring to that, to bear on that, to assist you with your larger goal, which obviously is to sell more of your products and services. And he gave me a job. He said, I like what you said. I'd like to collaborate with you. And so that was my big breakthrough into the Finnish job market. And I'm not saying this because I think it's something that works for everyone. Everyone has their own path, their own journey, but it was just something that worked for me at the time because it was 20 years ago. I don't know if that would work today, to be honest. It was a small company with big ambitions. And that meant that I think that the thinking was more open. And they were more willing to take risks in areas that probably would have been unfamiliar at that time.
Wow. It sounded like, you were very strategic in your approach. And I think that, whether it is 20 years ago or now, I think that still works for today. Because if you're looking for, whether to get a job or to form your own company, you just have to be strategic in your thinking and your approach. So, how do you think we should then prepare, people of color, to be, in a way, valuable?
Well, I mean, I will absolutely freely acknowledge that people of color perhaps have a bigger handicap when it comes to getting hired in the Finnish job market. But that depends. That's kind of a blanket statement because, of course, there are so many examples of people who prove that is not true. But let's just say that is the case. But for anyone, I would advise to be honest when you assess your skills. Don't start thinking that I could be the CEO of that company if you really don't have the training or the necessary experience or background for it. Be honest in your self-assessment. Be strategic, as I said, when you approach the market. Look for instances where you really can add value and where you feel you can fit in well. It's going to be an exercise in frustration to just send out 150 job applications for positions you're probably not even interested in or probably wouldn't do well in. So to try to find that meeting point between what you like to do, what you're capable of doing, and what the market wants. And again, talk is cheap. Things don't always work out that way, but do try to do that. But then again, this approach depends very much on your age. We were talking about this earlier, Kingsley. I think for younger people, where you may not have a lot of work experience under your belt and you just need to accumulate that background and accumulate that work experience, of course you can't really be as selective. You find jobs anywhere you can and build up that portfolio because as someone who hires people, I'm interested in looking at your work background and seeing that you've tried different things and that you are someone who is sort of scrappy and trying to fight your way through. But additionally, I think what's important is to learn the power of networks. Networking is super important, although I have to admit that it's very difficult in these times in which we're living now, where there are no longer as many or even any face-to-face interactions where you can meet people, because that's what helps you make an impression.
Sure.
Not that many opportunities to meet people live and network and meet people face-to-face, have a conversation and make an impression. I think what we need to remember is that Finland is small and very highly networked. And people know people who know people. So chances are when you're building your networks, you will meet someone who will remember you and may remember that, hey, that's that person I talk to, for example, you. There's that guy, Kingsley, who's trying to launch some business initiatives in Africa with Nordic partners. And maybe he would be a good guy for this. That you have no idea that is something that can actually bring you face to face with some life-changing opportunities when people meet you and they remember you. And that's going to involve getting out of your comfort zone. So not necessarily hanging out in the same groups or networking with the same people, or even, when we were preparing for this show, Kingsley, you had asked me in the prep about African networks and so on. Those are great. They provide a great deal of support. But unless you know for sure that that's going to provide you with an opportunity for entrepreneurship, or if it's a job opportunity you're looking for, you're going to have to break out of that. Keep your people close, but you're going to have to break out of that and interact with the mainstream, with the Finnish society, because that's where you will find more opportunities.
So those are like if I understand correctly, those are like the really important sort of aspect that helps you, obviously, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I cannot emphasize that enough. And I've had hard times too. I don't want anyone out there to think that it's all been smooth sailing for me. I have had very difficult times. From the very beginning, for example, when I talked about that opportunity I had, it was great. Because when you're employed, it's easier to get another job. And that was the launch pad for me. So I had that first opportunity with that CEO who took a chance. And then I moved on to another place of work where they also took a chance on me. And all of this time, I really was missing the role where my heart lay, which was in journalism. When I first came to Finland, I had applied to Yle, the national broadcaster, immediately, almost as soon as I got off the plane, so to speak, and heard nothing. But 3 years later, they reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're looking for freelancers." And
after 3 years.
After 3 years, and I always say
it's typical Finn, isn't it?
Yes, I always say it's great that I never changed my email address or my phone number, because that contact came after 3 years.
Yeah.
So I think the lesson is that you never know how things will play out, and sometimes it's a waiting game. You just got to wait it out. And so that took me back to Yle. But the point I want to make about the networks is that I didn't have much of a network when I didn't have a network when I came here, but I leaned on the network of my Finnish family. So I asked to borrow their network in order to get this opportunity. And I think that's a good example of how networks can really help people.
I really like the idea that, or your approach of actually leaning to your Finnish, family kind of network. So that in a way is your kind of starting point, right?
Yes.
But there could be so that some of us also here don't even have Finnish that kind of opportunity. So in a way it makes the network within the Black community to be very, very narrow. So how should we tackle that? Maybe you mentioned it, but yeah.
Well, no. Well, I mean, yes, it's a fair point that I was fortunate in that I was able to use the network of my Finnish family in that way. But then I also did go on to build a network of my own. So that was my entry point. And it's important. And I think the way you do that is by, as I said, getting out of your comfort zone. It doesn't always feel great. I've been at events where I've been the only Black person in the room. That's changing a lot now, but it's a tough climb, but we all have to face that hill and decide whether we're going to back down and retreat, or whether we're just going to try to push on ahead. And it's so you do some of the work yourself, but in our community, we also have our own small networks. And when we network among ourselves, I think what we can do is share our networks with each other, because you are connected to Finnish people now through your work, Kingsley, and this brings me to a point that I'd like to make, that I think is important, which is the principle of throwing a rope back. As I think I saw it or read it in a movie, or read it in a book or saw it in a movie. And the principle of throwing a rope back is that when you get to a point where you yourself, for example, may have a network that's broad enough or wide enough, that you use that to help others and bring them along on your journey. So in that sense, we all have smaller or larger or medium-sized networks in the Finnish community that we can share with each other, so that the entire network begins to grow in a kind of exponential way based on what we can all bring to that table. So yes, our networks in and of themselves are small, but we can scale them up if we share them.
So let's talk a bit about the because I know, like you rightly said, if we don't see the need to share with one another, that also itself is a problem. So there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's already a lot of things are not like the way they used to be 10, 15, even 20 years back. So things are still like progressing. It might be quite slow, but things are changing. I think the question here now is, how do we capitalize on the opportunity that we have? So step by step, figure out that there is an opportunity, and then also find a way to mitigate the challenges along the way.
Oh my God. Well, if I knew the answer to that, I would bottle it and sell it. Well, I agreed to have this conversation because I thought it was important to address the issue of work and ensuring that people can contribute professionally, which I know the vast majority of migrants in Finland want to do, regardless of where we come from. We contrary to the stereotypes that are out there about us, many of us want to work, we want to contribute, we want to be a meaningful part of this society. And you're right, there are obstacles to getting there. So the way to do that, I think, is to ensure that we skill up. And I mean, this is a no-brainer, and I know this is something that a lot of people are doing. So people are taking courses, people are learning new professions, people are being proactive. And so I think the short answer to your question is, a lot of what needs to be done is already being done. People are taking this challenge seriously and are trying to find ways around it. I think what we need is more of what you are doing, which is bringing people together to draw on best practices, to share ideas about what could possibly work, or what pitfalls to avoid. And I say that even though I always have to come back with this disclaimer that everyone has a separate journey, and what has worked for one person may not necessarily work for another. So sharing resources, helping each other along the way, encouraging people to be proactive in the market, encouraging people not to settle. I mean, if you're a job seeker, don't just send out the application and be passive about it, be active about it. Contact the recruiting manager. There's always a contact person to reach out to for more information about the position that you're applying for. Make that call or send that email. I would recommend that you make the call because it's more immediate and people don't always get around to their emails or prioritize them. Make that call because you will make an impression. And I think it's all about finding ways to make an impression that will help you move forward.
Excellent. Denise, thank you so much. I appreciate you for coming down to share your experience and insights. For me, I always like to point my people to something valuable, so you delivered. So please, if this content is of value to you, hit the like button, subscribe to this amazing community because we have amazing work to do together, and share with anyone, of course, that you know that will probably benefit from this kind of content. As I promise to deliver every week information-rich content to help our people move forward thoughtfully. Thanks again, and always remain safe.